In today's video, we have all the latest NHL trade rumors focusing on some key players that are in high demand from the Montreal Canadiens. Plus, we're talking about a couple of trade targets on the blue line for the Toronto Maple Leafs. We have the latest on John Klingberg, the latest on Claude Giroux. Plus, we have a big hiring in Vancouver where we have the first female assistant general manager, and we have a streak that should be tied tonight with Keith Yandle going after the Ironman streak. All that and more coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and rumors to talk about here today. First up, let's start with Keith Yandle, who's set to tie the all-time record for the Ironman streak tonight. Long record held by former player Doug Jarvis. Yandle is scheduled to play for the Flyers tonight, which will be his 964th consecutive NHL game. He's certainly put in a lot of minutes, a lot of shifts along the way, has been able to stay healthy. It's quite a feat. It doesn't really matter, in my opinion, what you really think of Yandle as a player. Fair to say he's certainly declined a bit recently, but he's always been the offensive guy, way more than he was ever known as your defensive specialist. He certainly was never really known as that. He's a very mobile, puck-moving, offensively gifted defenseman who's really put up, like I said, a lot of points, has had a real solid NHL career. Here's a quick look here at Keith Yandle by the numbers during this Ironman streak. During those 963 previous games, he's put in approximately 25,000 shifts. He's played approximately 21 or just shy of 21,000 minutes, 2,185 shots on goal. He's blocked 940 shots, and he's put up 572 points, which is the third most amongst defensemen during that time frame, which is extremely impressive. The Flyers are scheduled to play again tomorrow night, which then he would break the record and hold the record here on his own, especially during the past couple years with all the players who have been infected by COVID. 75% of the league has had a positive test. It's amazing he's never had to deal with COVID protocols, been able to stay healthy, not get banged up to the point that he's had to miss time. It's quite a feat. We've seen some other guys get close more recently, like Andrew Cogliano, for example, whose streak was unfortunately ended by suspension. And even if Yandle sets this record, which obviously he's expected to do, barring some weird circumstance tonight or tomorrow night, he's got Phil Kessel high on his tail as well, who's not too far off the mark and could catch and possibly even break the record depending on how much further it goes for Yandle. I know a big part of the reason he ended up in Philadelphia after getting moved on here from the Florida Panthers was the Flyers had assured him that they would help him get to the streak and they wouldn't scratch him. So I know that was a big part of ending up there as well. But like I said, regardless of if you're a fan of Yandle or not, it's an amazing accomplishment. And we certainly look forward to him tying the record tonight. And hopefully everything goes well for him to break the record tomorrow night. Now, waiver news, we had Jerard Fagerberg of the New York Rangers on waivers yesterday. He was not claimed, so he has indeed cleared, so he can be reassigned to the taxi squad or to their minor league affiliate. Now, as I mentioned, we also have some injury updates. The Penguins had suffered a big blow. Forward Teddy Blueger is going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks, suffering a broken jaw after getting hit pretty hard during the game on the weekend against the Winnipeg Jets. So that's certainly a big blow to the Penguins, who have dealt with their fair share of adversity and injury this year, to say the least. They just recently got close to having a full healthy team. Jason Zucker obviously was out on long-term injury reserve, came back briefly, and now he's back out on long-term injury reserve. Of course, Malkin missed the bulk of the season, who's been back recently. Crosby missed time this year. A lot of other guys too, but they've been able to really play well here as of late to get themselves in a real solid spot here in the standings. So obviously Blueger will be a big blow, but I'm sure they will continue to truck on and manage here just fine. Now, as I mentioned as well, we had a significant announcement out of the Vancouver Canucks organization today. Jim Rutherford, who's of course in the president role, has not hired a GM yet, but he has announced that they have hired Emilie Castonguay as an assistant general manager, and she becomes the first female to hold that role in the NHL. Of course, prior to that, she was the first full-time female agent under the recognized by the NHLPA as well. So, of course, she represented numerous players, including the likes of Alexis Lafreniere Certainly played Division I hockey herself. Obviously has a long, prestigious career in the business. Very well respected, looked upon as being extremely bright. She has obviously a lot of education as well, including a law degree, which is what she had done for education prior to entering being an agent. So certainly lots of experience when it comes to negotiating contracts. Which will be a big part, I'm sure, of what she helps Vancouver with. I know he's not there anymore, but the not-so-great contract that the Canucks gave to Antoine Roussel was represented by Castonguay on the other side. So, that Roussel deal we felt was I think a lot of people felt was a big overpayment. Well, she helped negotiate that. Well, now she can be doing it on the other side of the coin here. So the Canucks, I think, did hire themselves. Obviously, they wanted to kind of become a more diverse working area and have a prominent female. But she's well deserving. It doesn't matter male, female, or not. Like, she is an extremely bright lady who deserves this opportunity. And we look forward to seeing what she can do. It is expected that a GM will be named probably this week, according to Jim Rutherford. According to talking to Vancouver media, the interviews are done. An announcement likely to come. It could be any time later this week. We don't know when it's probably going to be. It could be like a Scott Mellenby. It could be Patrick Alvin. Could be a Sean Burke. We've heard that name too. There was a thing about Mike Fuda, but that seems to be not so much now. So I don't know who it's going to end up being. But that decision should not be too far into the future. Now, before we jump into the trade section of our video, I do want to pause for a moment and acknowledge our channel sponsor, Manscaped. Name a better duo than McDavid and Draisaitl this season. I've got one. Manscaped in grooming. That's right, our sponsors at Manscaped, the global leaders in below-the-waist grooming, have all the best tools to clean up your whole act when it comes to your hygiene for men. It's time to skate on the first line with the global leaders here in men's hygiene and join the movement at Manscaped, where you can get the Performance Package 4.0, which includes the Lawnmower 4.0, as well as some fantastic new products just recently launched, including the brand new 2-in-1 shampoo and conditioner. This is a terrific product. Allows you to wash your hair in one fell swoop, leaves you smelling great. It has a refined cologne quality fragrance attached. Absolutely phenomenal. And of course, the other new product most recently launched is the premium body wash to kind of complete the set. But that's not all. Manscaped has new products coming out here yet again in January, so you want to stay tuned. The body wash gives you deep hydration, keeps you smelling great, and not only smelling great, but feeling moisturized as well. Join the movement at manscaped.com and use promo code TSH for 20% off and free shipping. That's promo code TSH for 20% off and free shipping. So thanks very much for watching the promotional content. I do greatly appreciate it. Certainly check out their site and consider using our promo code for 20% off. Highly great quality products, which of course I highly recommend and fully endorse. Now on to the trade section of today's video. First, let's start with the Maple Leafs. So we have comments here from Darren Dreger talking about a couple of targets that they may be looking at on the blue line. One includes division rival, which is really not a huge rivalry right now because they're in very different spots. Ben Chiarot of the Montreal Canadiens. Now, when it comes to Chiarot, he's been mentioned in a variety of teams' radar here. We've also got comments when it comes to Chiarot from Jeff Merrick and Elliot Friedman, linking him also to teams like the St. Louis Blues. The Florida Panthers is another one. And even to a degree, we've heard the Calgary Flames could have interest in Chiarot. So when it comes to the Leafs, obviously he makes a lot of sense given the fact that they want another guy who can play like Jake Muzzin. Not necessarily Muzzin insurance per se, because even if Muzzin's healthy, I think they can still use another player who can play a similar type of role. He's obviously not coming at a super expensive price tag, but it's believed that the Habs might be able to get a first round pick. I'm not sure if the Leafs want to do that or not. They very well, might end up spending more of their future assets and picks here, but we'll see what they end up doing. But Chiarot is one of the guys that they are, kind of kicking tires on and are linked to. But the other one, and a lot of this is going to depend on what happens with the Ducks, but it is believed that they do have, heavy interest in Josh Manson, and I've been saying for a long time that I think he'd be terrific there, especially where he can play the right side, right shot defenseman, big, strong. He's a rental, doesn't come on a huge cap hit. Somebody that, depending on what they do in the summer, they might be able to re-sign, not a given, because they're going to have some tough decisions in Toronto, like many teams, tight up against the cap there. But Manson is certainly a guy in Anaheim to watch. We don't know exactly where the Ducks are going to be here in a few weeks' time or closer to the NHL trade deadline. They had a hot start. We're in the playoff mix. As time goes along, will they kind of fall back and become more of the sellers that many of us thought they would be going into this season? They do have some very, very interesting pending UFAs, including Manson and Hampus Lindholm and Rickard Rakell and Ryan Getzlaf. Will any or all of their UFAs end up getting moved? It's possible, but if they end up heading towards the playoffs, it's pretty likely. I don't know if they'd keep them all as their own rental. Maybe they move one or two. I don't know. But it's certainly a team to watch here because, like I said, they have some big names that could be a big help to other teams. But if they're heading towards the playoffs, their plans are going to be adjusted. But the Leafs, Chiarot and Manson are two that they're eagerly watching here for the blue line for the playoffs. That very well could be trade targets for them. Now, when it comes to another big name defenseman on the market, Jeff Marek, Elliot Friedman, many of the other insiders are linking John Klingberg, saying that Carolina appears to be the favorite for this landing spot for this Swedish defenseman in Dallas. That Carolina would be the prime target. We know they had a guy, Dougie Hamilton, who's not there anymore, who they lost in free agency. And even though the Canes are really, really good, if they could add a guy like Klingberg, they're just going to become that much deeper, stronger, and better. And it's going to be a little bit of an arms race, I think, to a degree between some of those teams in the Southeast, between the Canes and the Panthers and the Lightning. And you get the Rangers. It's going to be a tough Eastern Conference playoff with some teams having early exits that were phenomenal in the regular season. It could become a little bit of an arms race there, and Carolina seems to be zoning in on Klingberg as their primary target for a blue line addition. Doesn't mean for sure that's going to happen, of course, but obviously it makes a lot of sense that they would look to do that type of thing. So we'll see what happens there. But some big name defensemen are going to be available. I know at one point it was looking like the blue line market might be thin going into the deadline, but we have so many pending UFAs that remain unsigned. It looks now like it could be a very, very deep pool of D-men with a varying degree of skill sets that are going to be available here for trade. It could be a very busy deadline when it comes to those types of players. When it comes to Montreal, I'm listening to Frank Saravalli talk between his own podcast as well as he made an appearance on the Jeff Marek show on Friday, and they were talking a bit about a variety of players, but one thing he's had to say is that Arturi Lehkonen might be the player most in demand in Montreal when it comes to the guys being likely dealt ahead of the deadline. I know Friedman and Marek themselves in their podcast has talked about the fact that they feel like Chiarot will likely be the first domino to fall in Montreal, but Saravalli says that it could be Chiarot, but not to be surprised if Lehkonen is the guy, given how much interest there is around the league, including a team like the New York Rangers. He says that he feels the Rangers are going to be busy and that the Rangers are a team that are likely looking for multiple forwards and possibly a defenseman for depth here as well. Now, they're in on a variety of players. They're not certainly going into this knowing that they're not going to land them all. But of course, we've heard the linkage of JT Miller, a reunion to the Rangers, that there's a lot of interest in seeing they can get him out of Vancouver. I've seen a lot of other media, though, kind of calm that one down and say, I don't think so. So I'm not completely sold on the idea of Miller to the Rangers. I can see him being a terrific fit there, but at this point, I'm not convinced that the Canucks are wanting or ready or willing to trade Miller at this point. So I think to a less degree of certainty that that's less likely to happen. But Lehkonen is a player that Saravalli links to the Rangers in the forward group, as well as Blackhawks forward Ryan Carpenter. He says those are a couple of players that they're kind of keeping their eye out for. A guy like Lehkonen's not overly expensive. It can move up and down your lineup, kill penalties, give you some offense. And kind of go from there. So, with a guy like Lehkonen generating so much interest, you have to think that it's a good possibility. He might be the first guy traded, but of course, with Ken Hughes now the GM in Montreal and Jeff Gordon, they need to kind of do their evaluations here and make some some tough choices, but Montreal is going to be a team that's expected to be quite busy. Speaking of Montreal, there's even word from Montreal Hockey Now's website indicating that they've talked to some different NHL executives, and they feel there is a market for defenseman Jeff Petrie. Now, of course, Petrie's making $6.5 million, having a horrendous year, but in the past, he's been a pretty steady, right shot, 40-point player. Last year, he had a real solid year with the offense. Maybe if he can get a fresh start, he can get his old game going again, and I guess that's the rationale around it, but he still has a few years left on that term. The team that they mainly linked him to would be a team like the Detroit Red Wings. And of course, he does have ties to the state of Michigan, so it might be a place he's comfortable playing anyway. When you look at the Detroit Red Wings, though, I mean, they have the cap space. They have a pretty good group of young players that they're building around. If he could regain his form, he could be a good, defensive leader to kind of help some of those young guys and be a good vet presence back there for a guy like Seider and some of the other D-men that are young and up and coming, but still getting a big role in Detroit. I wouldn't completely rule it out, but given his contract, I have to think that we'll take this rumor with a little bit of a grain of salt here and think it's pretty not as likely, and especially with Detroit slowly falling out of the playoff picture, I'm not sure that they're going to go out at the deadline either and make a big addition on a big contract like that. Don't know that it really entirely makes a lot of sense for them. When it comes to some other Montreal players, though, a guy like Tyler Toffoli apparently is generating interest from a variety of teams as well. He's been linked to some different teams, but this is a combination of what was said by Frank Saravalli, Elliot Friedman, and Jeff Merrick. The teams like Calgary, Carolina were the two ones mentioned mainly for Toffoli, but my own personal 2 cents here is I wouldn't rule out a team like Colorado either. They're definitely bound to add likely a right shot forward, and he might come at a lower price tag to some of the other names that they're looking at, which we'll talk about here in a moment. But if those other names that they're also kind of linked to don't work out, I can see Toffoli in the Avalanche organization being a real possibility. And, Carolina, hard to say where exactly they would slot him in the lineup. They see the Carolina Hurricanes and the Florida Panthers and teams like that. They're such a deep team and so strong. And some of these additions that they're being rumored to be making, it's hard to imagine how it all fits together. But, I can certainly understand the interest. Now, Calgary, on the other hand, I think would make a lot of sense for Toffoli. I think he would fit real well with a group of top 6 guys there, between Lindholm and Tkachuk and Gaudreau. I think he could play with those guys and really be a solid fit. He's played in Western Canada before. I don't know. Obviously, he doesn't have a lot of control over where he's traded to because he doesn't have that protection in his contract, but still, bound to get interest. But he's a guy that I'm not 100% sold that Montreal trades, but there's certainly going to be enough interest that they're going to have to heavily consider it. And if the offer is right, they may not have a choice. That might be too good to pass up, but we will see on that when we get closer to the deadline. Now, when it comes to the Avs, the players that I was mentioning, that Friedman and Merrick especially have been linking to that team is Claude Giroux in Philadelphia. That's a matter of time here before they have the conversation, if they haven't already, and find out where he wants to go. He's going to have a lot of control and go to a place he's comfortable, and they keep saying that the Avalanche are that team. I mean, Jeff Merrick even made mention that he could see if the Dallas Stars fall out of the playoff picture and become more of a seller, that a pending UFA like Joe Pavelski could also be a guy that makes a lot of sense for the Avalanche. A good, solid veteran, right shot guy. Of course, Giroux and Pavelski can both play center. They can both play wing. Preferably, I think they would probably both be best suited on the wing, but they have played enough center during their time in the NHL that they could be used in that role if need be as well, depending on injuries and whatnot. So the Avalanche, I can see they're going to be going forward as well. Like I said, a lot of these teams, we'll see what they actually end up doing, but some of them are like it's becoming a bit of an arms race. We might know well ahead of the playoffs who's in and who's out, because like in the Eastern Conference, like it's not real close. There's not a whole lot of buzz going down the stretch here, wondering who's getting in and who's getting out. It's going to be pretty clear. A little bit of jockeying for position to see who plays what spot. A little bit more less certainty in the West right now. But a team like the Avalanche, I think, see themselves a clear path to getting through this year and breaking through to the final, and adding a real solid vet who wants to chase the Stanley Cup with them would make a ton of sense. But I can also see them maybe maybe wanting to add in gold too. So like it's going to boil down to what can they squeeze in under the cap. They won't be able to do it all, So we'll see where this goes. But Giroux or Pavelski to the Avs might make a ton of sense as we head down the stretch here. So let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.